1923. Dry Creek, Colorado. A place so small it never made the maps, though the wind knew its name well. The land stretched wide and unforgiving, all yellow grass and rattling fence wire, and the sky hung low like an old quilt, heavy with the weight of coming snow. It was a hard country for anyone to love, harder still to survive. She stood in the doorway of the cabin, barefoot, her shift clinging to her thin frame. Her name was Mara, the name he'd used in the note, as if she might need reminding. The wind had taken the paper once she let it go, lifting it out over the pasture like it might carry the shame farther than her feet could. The cabin was half finished, with gaps in the wood that let the cold in. Smoke no longer rose from the chimney. Inside, the fire was dead, and the food was gone. All she had was her children, both under 5, their eyes wide and confused, asking without words where he'd gone and why. He had taken the mule and the wagon, left behind a woman with cracked hands and 2 little mouths to feed a woman who'd followed him from Missouri with more hope than scent. The note had said only one word: unwanted. Mara had not cried. Not then, not even after the tracks in the snow faded and she knew he wasn't coming back. She had simply picked up the baby, quieted the girl's whimper, and sat herself down at the table to think. Hunger gnawed at her, but there was no time for grief. Outside, the wind bent the grass in one long direction. The mountains beyond stood indifferent, blue-gray and unmoved. The world did not care that a man had abandoned his family. The world had seen worse. She stepped outside, the frost biting at her heels. A coyote watched her from the ridge, then turned away uninterested. The baby coughed once in her arms. The girl, older, sat with a rag doll on the porch step, humming something tuneless. Mara looked at the sun trying to claw its way through the clouds and made herself a promise. She would not let her children die out here. Not like dogs. The well still worked. The chickens, half wild, still laid. There was enough to make it to next week, maybe the one after. She knew how to trap rabbit. She remembered how her mother used to make flour stretch. But this wasn't about food. This was about something more. A kind of silence had filled her chest that day, one she didn't know if she'd ever get out from under. She watched the sun go down, red and mean-looking. She held the baby close, felt the girl's small hand find hers, and stood there while the wind howled across the plain. She was not ready, but she was alive. She kept the children warm with burlap and quilts stuffed with straw. At night they all slept closed, the little girl's feet tucked under her ribs, the baby curled against her chest, like he belonged there more than anywhere else. The wind slipped through the boards and made the lantern gutter, but the children didn't cry. They had their mother, and she had her silence. Mara worked the days like she'd been born to it, though she hadn't. She'd grown up in a 2-room house near the rail yard in Kansas City, daughter of a man who drank too much and a mother who'd died before 30. There were things you learned early in a place like that. How to stay small. How to walk fast and not look back. She had thought following Joseph West would be different, that the land would give them something better. He had called it a chance, but he had never been built for hardship. The first snow came and he stopped singing. The cold got into his joints and then into his heart. The baby got sick and he didn't know what to do with the crying. By the time he left, his voice had turned thin and mean. He never raised his hand, but he didn't need to. The girl had seen too much. She was quiet now in a way a 4-year-old shouldn't be. When Mara looked into her daughter's eyes, she sometimes saw her own mother looking back. That same tired, knowing like love had been stretched too thin too many times. There were mornings when Mara didn't get up right away. The cold made her slow, but it was the weight in her chest that held her down. She thought about the note. Just that one word, like it said everything: unwanted. Like she was a burden, not a person. Like she was something to leave behind. But then the baby would start to fuss, and the girl would climb on top of her asking if they could eat something warm. And Mara would sit up, legs stiff, hair tangled, and she would get on with the day. Because no one else would. Because even if she didn't matter, they did. She found herself remembering her mother's hands, how they moved through dough, how they stitched torn seams. Her mother had not been a gentlewoman, but she'd stayed even when her man didn't come home. Even when the neighbors whispered. Mara didn't want to be like her, not entirely. But she understood her now in a way she hadn't before. By the second week, the girl asked if Papa was ever coming back. Mara didn't lie. She said no, plain and low. The girl nodded like she'd known it already and went back to her play. That night, Mara sat up after the children had fallen asleep. She lit a second lantern and wrote a letter to no one, to nothing, just to put words on a page. Her hand shook. I am still here. She didn't sign it, didn't fold it, just left it on the table, let the wind take that one too the next morning. Subscribe and keep pace with the frontier. The snow had begun to crust, old and gray, packed hard in the shadows. What was left of the garden lay under it, brittle stalks poking through like bones. Mara had taken to checking the trapline every morning before the children woke. It was mostly empty. She was bent near the creek bed, her fingers raw from prying open a frozen snare, when she heard hooves. Not fast, not urgent, just the slow rhythm of someone not in a hurry. She turned, one hand already on the hatchet at her belt. A rider came through the bare cottonwoods. Tall in the saddle, thick coat scarf pulled up high. The horse was a gelding, sturdy with shaggy fetlocks and a steady gait. She stood her ground. When the rider got close enough, he raised a hand. Ma'am. His voice was rough but not unkind. He looked to be around 30, maybe a few years older, with a face half covered in road dust and beard. He didn't smile. You're on private land, she said. I figured, he answered. You got water. Wasn't looking to trespass long. Just passing through. Mara didn't lower the hatchet. Then pass through. The man nodded slowly, as if that was fair. He glanced past her toward the cabin, toward the thin wisp of smoke she'd coaxed out that morning, with the last of the kindling. You got little one. She didn't answer. His eyes softened. I ain't here for trouble, he said. Name's Elias. Been riding south since before Christmas. Looking for work. Got turned around near the ridge when the weather shifted. Mara watched him. She didn't trust the soft ones. Joseph had come talking sweet, too. You sick? She asked. No, ma'am. You armed? I am. Good. Then you don't need me. Elias studied her for a long moment. He didn't fidget or plead. Just watched her like a man trying to decide something important. You need anything? He asked finally. I ain't got much, but I got a sack of oats and some dried apple. The children had eaten the last of the root cellar carrots the night before. She didn't answer. Elias reached into his saddlebag slowly and pulled out the sack. No strings, he said. Leave it here. Keep going. He set it down on a patch of flat snow, stepped back, and mounted again. Mara didn't move. Take care, he said. Then he rode on. She didn't breathe until he disappeared behind the ridge. Then she crouched, picked up the bag. The oats were real. The apple was dry and sweet and tasted like something from a memory. She fed the children that night without saying where it came from. The girl asked, Is there more? No, Mara said. Not yet. She didn't know why she walked back to the creek the next morning. Maybe to check the line. Maybe to see if the snow had softened. But when she got there, another small bundle lay by the same patch of ground. A half loaf of bread wrapped in oilcloth. No note. She looked to the ridge, but there was no one in sight. By the fourth morning, she waited for him. Didn't tell herself that, but she was up early, hair braided, tight boots laced. She went to the creek, like always, trapline empty again, and there he was. Not on horseback this time, just walking beside the gelding, reins in hand. The cold flushed his face and his coat was buttoned wrong. "You're stubborn," she said. He stopped, grinned for the first time. "You're alive." She stared at him, arms folded tight across her chest. "I came to ask," he said, "if you needed help chopping wood." She didn't answer. "Or not," he added. Behind her, the cabin was no more than a shadow-thin smoke curling into the sky. She thought about the days ahead, how little there was to burn, how much colder it would get. "Fine," she said, "but don't expect a hot meal." He followed her back without a word, and they worked side by side for hours. He chopped, she stacked. The children peeked out from the doorway, then crept into the cold, wrapped in old coats too big for them. He didn't try to speak to them, just nodded. By sundown there was a neat pile against the wall, and blisters forming on her palm. She poured water for him in a tin cup and handed him a crust of dry biscuit. "Where are you headed?" she asked. Elias took a sip. "Nowhere urgent. I done some time up near Green River. Freight, mostly. Tried ranch work, didn't stick. Been drifting since fall." "That's supposed to impress me." "No, ma'am." She liked that he didn't look sorry for himself. She liked that he didn't ask about her man, didn't ask what she was doing out here alone. He just wiped the sweat from his brow, squinted toward the mountains, and said, "You need help tomorrow." She hesitated. "There's still more to cut," she admitted. He nodded. The next day he returned. Brought salt pork and another bundle of apple slices. Stayed until his fingers turned red from cold. He showed the little girl how to use a short-handled broom to sweep the porch without losing all the kindling. He helped her tie a sack for the baby's feet so he could crawl without freezing. Mara watched, quiet. In the evenings, Elias slept in the lean-to with his horse. Wouldn't come inside no matter the cold. Said it wasn't right. "I don't mean to stay long," he told her one night. "You said that already." They sat outside with tin cups of hot water between them, listening to the coyotes far off. "You're not like most men," she said. "No, ma'am." "You lost someone." He looked at the ground. "A brother," he said after a long pause. "War took him. He was the best of us." She didn't offer comfort. She didn't have it to give. But she understood that hole in the world, the kind only the dead could leave behind. He looked up, his eyes soft in the firelight. "You're raising good children." She shook her head. "I'm trying to keep them alive." He didn't argue, just nodded, and they sat in silence a long while more. By the end of the week, the baby reached for Elias when he passed by. The girl asked him if he could fix the loose hinge on the chicken coop. Mara let him. She watched him work, noticed the way he hummed under his breath, the way his hands were calloused but gentle. She didn't trust it, not yet. But she didn't tell him to go. It was near the end of February when word came. A ranch hand from over the ridge stopped by looking for strays, saw Elias in the yard, and recognized him. The man leaned in close, half-whispered something Mara couldn't hear, then rode off fast. Elias stood still a long time after. That evening he sat by the fire with his hat in his hands, quiet in a way that felt different. Heavy. "I should go," he said. Mara didn't look up from her sewing. "Why?" "Man from Blue Rock recognized me. Said folks think I took something from the McLaren place last fall. They been looking." "Did you?" "No, ma'am. But that don't always matter." She tied off the thread with a tug. "Then let 'em look. I ain't dragging trouble to your door." "You're not dragging anything," she said. But his jaw had set, and she knew that look. The one men got when they wanted to run. She'd seen it before. The next morning she found him saddling the gelding, bags packed. She didn't stop him. The children were asleep inside, the snow falling light and steady. "You came here with nothing," she said. "Now you're running with guilt you don't own." I came here to pass through. That's all I meant. You stayed." He looked away. "I don't know how to belong anywhere anymore." She stepped closer, close enough to see the lines at the corner of his mouth, the fear beneath the quiet. "Neither did I," she said. "Still don't. But you helped me carry something. That has to count." He swallowed. "If I stay and they come, it'll be worse." "They always come," she said. "One kind or another. Let 'em." The horse shifted its weight. Elias looked down at her hand. She'd reached out without knowing, resting her fingers on the saddle horn beside his. "Stay until spring," she said. "Then go if you want. But don't leave today." His shoulders dropped just barely. The storm was still coming, the air thick with it, and maybe the law too, or the lies of it. But he nodded. "All right," he said. "One more season." That night he told her more than he had before. About the man who died on the trail. About the watch they said he stole, though he'd buried it with the body. About how easy it was to get named guilty once the war was done and the world wanted someone to blame. Mara didn't judge him. She'd known truth had a cost and justice wasn't always the thing that paid it. But the weight of his past hung between them, and she could feel her own fear rising again. Not just fear of the law. Fear of letting someone matter. She lay awake long after the children had gone still. The storm creaked the roof. Elias slept in the lean-to, and she could hear his cough deep in his chest. She pulled the blanket tighter, turned her face to the wall. This was the part where a woman should decide. Hold on or let go. Choose a safer path or the one where the ground kept shifting. She didn't know yet. The rider came at dusk, just as the sun cracked below the horizon and turned the sky the color of rust. Mara saw him first, black coat, hard mouth, no greeting. He came straight to the yard and dismounted without tying his horse. His eyes scanned the place like he already knew what he'd find. Elias stepped out before she could say a word. No coat, just his shirt sleeves and a quiet look that made her chest tighten. "McLaren," he said. The man gave a short nod. "Knew you'd hole up somewhere." Elias didn't argue, didn't move. "You took my brother's watch," McLaren said. "You ran like a thief." "I buried him with it." McLaren spat in the snow. "That's not what I heard." "You weren't there." Mara stepped forward, put herself between them before she even thought to. "This man has worked here, chopped our wood, carried our water, fed my children when I couldn't. You'll speak the truth or you'll leave." McLaren looked at her like she was no more than brush in his way. "He's a drifter. War boy with a record." "You think that means anything out here?" "It means he stayed when someone else ran," she said, her voice hard now. "It means my children know his name." McLaren stepped closer, hand near his belt. "This ain't your concern, lady?" Elias moved, then slow and even hand out, not to fight, but to keep peace. "You want the truth," he said. "I got no proof. Only what I did. He died in the pass. Cold, sudden. I gave him my coat. Took nothing. Buried him proper. Left the watch like I should." McLaren looked at him, long eyes sharp as broken glass. Then something shifted. "His wife found the grave," he muttered. "The coat. The marker." Never said a word. Mara saw his jaw work, saw the doubt crawl in. He glanced once more at the cabin, at the children's toys scattered by the step, and back at Elias. "You stay here," he said. "You keep quiet. I don't want to see you past spring." And he mounted up, boots scraping the stirrups, and rode into the dark without another word. Elias stood still until the hoofbeats faded. "You all right?" Mara asked. He didn't answer at first, just looked at her with something close to wonder. "You didn't have to speak for me." "Yes, I did." The door creaked open. The little girl stood there, hair a mess, thumb in her mouth. Elias looked at her, then at Mara. "You ever think about starting over?" he asked. She looked out across the empty yard, the trail cut fresh in snow, the way the stars began to show even before full dark. "Every day. Then maybe this is it." She stepped closer, touched his sleeve. He didn't flinch. "We're not nothing," she said, "even if we came from it." "No," he said, "we're not." That night he came inside for the first time, sat at the table like he belonged there, held the baby in his arms until he slept. She didn't say much. Neither did he. But when she set an extra plate on the table, he filled it without asking. The world hadn't changed, but something in the room had. Spring came like a whisper, soft and slow. The creek thawed, running clear again. The ground let go of its frost, and the cottonwoods budded with pale green. Life came back to Dry Creek in pieces, quiet, steady, nothing loud. Just enough. Elias stayed. Said nothing of leaving again, though he kept his saddle gear wrapped and ready in the lean-to for weeks. But each day he helped fix another thing: the chicken wire, the slanting porch post, the stovepipe that never drew right. He built a second bed for the girl, carved her name into the side with a knife so old the blade had gone silver smooth. When the baby took his first step, it was toward Elias. Mara didn't say what it meant, not out loud, but she watched his hands when he worked, the way he carried the child on his hip, the way the girl leaned into his leg without thinking. She saw how he checked the door latch 3 times each night, how he stepped outside before bed to look at the sky, like he was making sure it hadn't changed. She began to trust it. Not all at once, not with words, but in gestures: folding his shirts with the laundry, setting out a second cup in the morning, asking him to plant the beans deeper because she never could get them to come up right. One morning she found him by the creek again. He was carving something small, a button maybe, or a coin-sized disc of wood. He didn't look up as she approached. "I've been thinking," he said, "about building something more permanent. A barn, maybe a corral. You planning to stay long enough to see it used?" "I am." She crouched beside him. "And what would you be if you stayed?" He looked at her, real and quiet. "Whatever you need me to be." Mara looked down at the little disc in his hands. He turned it over to show her her name, carved rough but clear, and beneath it 2 smaller names side by side. She swallowed hard. "I've got nothing else to give," he said. "No land, no money. Just my back and what's left of my name." She took the carving from his hands and held it tight. "That's more than I had." He stood, offered his hand, and this time she took it. Later that spring they buried the note Joseph left, folded it without reading it again, and placed it under the first stone of the new foundation. Let the earth have it. The wedding was nothing but a Sunday dinner with the children dressed clean and wildflowers on the table. No vows, no preacher, just Elias saying, "I'll stay," and Mara saying, "Then stay." They built the barn that summer, painted the door red with leftover stock paint, hung the wood carving above the threshold. When the baby cried in the night, Elias rose first. When the girl asked if she could call him Papa, he nodded without looking away. The cabin grew full. Not loud, not easy, but full. And when fall came around again, they sat on the porch at dusk, the children between them, and watched the light go long across the field. There were no fences to mark what was theirs, but they knew it by heart. The wind still came hard, and the land still gave nothing without asking for blood. But it was theirs now, and they were not alone. If you've ever prayed for a second chance, subscribe and watch them unfold here.